So with Rise of the Duelist, we got two very new powerful decks, Infernal Knight and Dogmatica, which sort of like changed the metagame a little bit, and they're sort of resilient to certain hand traps and stuff like that you were currently playing. So we just want to go over a sort of like hand trap cheat sheet as to what ones you should be considering putting in your main and side deck compared to what you used to.
Yeah, so I think we're just going to cover pretty much like every hand trap that's kind of available. Obviously some that you guys are going to be quite familiar with, others are probably going to be like stuff that's been out of the meta but still have like a lot of plausibility, and we'll just go through some of the pros and cons of pretty much everything that's available to you.
So the first card we want to talk about is Nibiru the Primal Being. I'm quite sure this card doesn't need a lot of introduction. It's been quite notorious in the game since its release, basically.
I think the only thing that we've seen like recently, obviously we're still playing locals most weeks, and that everybody just seems to actually make a negate for this. So it's like, it's obviously still like probably the best one overall because it counters, you know, for pretty much every deck pretty much. But it's like everybody's making a negate before you can actually, you know, trigger this. So it's kind of like, for us I think it's losing its appeal a little bit, but obviously it's still one of the best hand traps out there.
I think against the Dogmatica deck especially, I think it's actually just terrible. Like, their turn basically is going to go normal summon Alistar, make Almirage, so that's summon number 2, they'll make Secure Gondor, which is number 3, and then they'll Invocation for Mechaba, which is number 4. So Nibiru is just like not likely to resolve against that deck at all.
Yeah, and even if they do push it and say if they summon, you know, the Ecclesia after that, it's 5 summons, Macabra's already there, ready to negate. So it's like, it's just really not that impactful. And we're finding against, obviously, I still play a lot of Adamancipator, and you can quite easily put a negate up before this card actually like ruins you. It's only when you open like suboptimal that this card punishes you. So a lot of the times it's just not feeling that amazing, but like overall it's still definitely worth playing, definitely worth siding.
I think what I've noticed when I play against you as well is that sometimes you don't even need a negate. You can actually just let them Nibiru you, and it actually just doesn't matter because you can either hard open block to be able to like do everything anyway. The Eldlik deck, if they can make their Halki Firebracks before resolving their Jet Synchron effect to summon out the grave, they can just play straight through this as well. So it's sort of like, it's kind of niche, but like it feels like you have to play it just because it's the most powerful one. But yeah, so like Nibiru is like, it is like still good against the Infernal Knight deck as well, like on the basis that they don't make gear free as their 4th summon, which they can do. But it just depends, it basically just comes down to whether they want to be greedy or not.
So yeah, hand trap number 2, we think these ones are quite similar, so we're probably going to talk about them together. Ghost Ogre and Gamma. These two sort of twin with Nibiru can actually like obviously be super impactful.
Like, it's quite cool when you see Nibiru with another hand trap, because it basically means that you can ignore whatever negate they make, because then you can just blow that one up as well.
Because if they're making Appaloosa, in whatever deck they'll make Appaloosa, you know, as their, say, 5th summon, and you've got the Nibiru. If you've got like these two, then obviously this is going to go through. But like as a standalone card, it still has a lot of uses against like the Zexal decks if you hit the field spell, against multi-roll.
Both of these are pretty good against Hulk, like on its own as well, because the whole point is that they then use the Hulk to make Link Cross. This actually just removes the body from the board. Both of these are really good against the Infernal Knight deck as well, because their normal summon is usually very impactful. So say for instance they summon Neospace Connector, the very purpose that they play that card is to play through hand traps, whereas if you meet it with Gamma, that is the one hand trap which sort of like stumps them. So unless they can like hard pendulum summon or they have some crazy extender, they can't play through Gamma. Whereas Ogre with something like Sublimation Knight, obviously it just sort of cancels that card completely. Ogre's really good to drop on the Assault as well, because they always like activate the search effect. Like against that deck, I'd just genuinely think it's better to just remove the body off the board than it is to try and stop an effect.
I think with Gamma, the only thing that like I really like about this card is if you go second, I think this is probably like the most impactful hand trap probably out of the whole lineup, just because it obviously removes that body. But like, I think in going second decks, this is probably something that you want to look at, because it covers quite a lot of stuff rather than having to play, so maybe I'll play 3 of this, 3 of this. Like, you could just literally just stick this in, and like going second, this is like one of the best cards out there, like hand trap wise.
And this is nuts as well, because this summons itself as well as another monster. So like, this is like, you can make it look, this is a full Hulk combo on its own.
Exactly.
So it's like, yeah, this card's mental.
So yeah, that's it for those two. We're going to go through these three that are obviously like similar in effects, but obviously conditions, scenarios obviously are all going to be a little bit different. So yeah, Valor being the oldest one, obviously, just what it says on the tin.
I think Valor's the one that's like, all of them have like a little pro to them, but Valor's is sort of like the least impactful in the sense where Valor is the only one that you can activate in multiples in the same chain. So obviously this is a hard one to return, and then if you were to activate impermanence, you can't use another impermanence because you control a card. Whereas Valor basically says that you can try and Valor something. If that Valor tries to get be negated, you can then drop a Valor on top of it.
I think the only big downside about this is like it's really weird how it's just got that main phase clause. Like, I just don't understand why it has that. It's obviously like an old card, but there's a lot of things now that happen in the battle phase that like some scenarios where you want them to go to battle phase. I don't know, say for instance like a Hayate, so then you have to activate this in main phase, which like gives them a little bit more option to play around things and do more things. So like overall, like it's great that you can play like 2 or 3 and you can just drop, but I don't know, I'm falling out of love with Valor a lot. It's not one I'm like super happy about, but
it's like, I personally like Valor in sort of like back row decks as opposed to impermanence, because I think what happens when I set an impermanence a lot is my opponent always just makes Phoenix to try and clear this and then makes the threatening card. What I like about Valor is that they can't do that, and you can actually just wait for the scary card to come out to be able to Valor that. But then I suppose we can talk about this one now. So like, this one is sort of like really niche in what it's for, but it's essentially the same card as like both of these, because you can technically use it going first or second, and you can use it, well, not first or second, but you can use it on your own turn and your opponent's turn when you go second. But like this has a really niche interaction when it comes to things that like get summoned on your opponent's turn. Stuff like Artifact Scythe coming off as a Sanctum, a Dingyatsu coming out the grave, you can negate with this. So there are like enough benefits to like make you consider this card. But usually when we're playing this, it's usually because we've already maxed on Valor and Impermanence. But like all these cards are very strong. Like I personally like all of them. I think Impermanence is probably the best hand trap, in my opinion.
It's the best one to draw as the 6th. It comes up against back row decks if you set it, if they've got a floodgate. I think Impermanence is probably the most sort of like hard working one out of them all.
This one also is the only hand trap that doesn't trigger, make 3 tactical talents live for your opponent. And it's also the only one that like Guardian can't negate, that Appaloosa can't negate.
Exactly.
So like this one is sort of like uncounterable, whereas like these ones they can either counter them or punish you for doing it.
I think the only other little benefit from Ghost Mourner is the fact that obviously the burn damage. So if you're playing competitive somewhere, I think this is probably the only thing that you'd put in just for that thought. If your deck can't do any burn damage and you're going into time, you can drop this in, send them first, and then just try and do that damage. That's the only like plus side for this one. But I think that's only in like super competitive play where you'd actually be like, okay, I'd pick this over this or this. But like Jake was saying, this is probably going to be the last one out of the 2. If you maxed out on these, then this would come in. But
the next one is Ash Blossom. This card's probably like the most common card played in the game at the minute, and it probably has been since its release, probably.
I just don't think it's the best. Like normally I think we'd say with this card that it's like the best overall hand trap like for everything, like in any deck, because it's like it's the best one that will stop all the stuff that's like actually amazing. But the more I think about it, the more I play it, the more I'm just not that happy with it. Like I feel like, especially this format where it's like the only really thing that like you really want to stop is like obviously the Howl Captain, and it's like everything else kind of does that better, because like you obviously want to see an impermanence for the Howl Cap like rather than this. And it's just like it just feels very underwhelming like at the minute. I just don't think this is like one of my first hand traps that I'm going to stick in like over anything else so far. But what do you think about it?
I don't know, I think like Ash, like as we've just said, Ash in general is just like an amazing card. I just don't think it's like the format where it's the best at the minute. I'm not really saying, like, I don't think we're saying that you shouldn't play this card, because it is still like it is good against a large like amount of decks for all like different reasons. But I think if you want silver bullet cards for the meta decks, this is not the hand trap that you should choose. So yeah,
I definitely agree. So moving on to some of the more niche ones that are obviously not exactly staples, but we're just going to talk about first Fantasma. I'm quite like this at the minute. Like I'm playing decks that are going second, so it just feels like getting a body and drawing into something, because everything seems to be playing some sort of link monster. Like it feels quite strong at the minute. Obviously its targeting effect on field is a benefit as well.
It's especially good if you're playing invoked, because Alistair is an absolute lightning rod for hand traps.
Definitely, yeah.
But I think when you decide to play Fantasma, you've sort of got to build your deck to accommodate it. You either need to be playing plenty of other hand traps in hope to draw off this, or you basically need to see Fantasma as not a hand trap and just a draw card, because this card doesn't actually supply any disruption whatsoever on their turn. So this card needs to either be drawing you more hand traps or just board breaking cards in general, stuff like droplets, like removal sort of stuff, I guess, like back row removal, like in game 2 and stuff like that. But yeah, I personally like this as well, but you can't really consider it to be a hand trap, so to speak. But it's just here sort of like because of how it works, I guess.
Yeah, like it obviously has like a similar function to these, where it, you know, activates from hand and gives, like, rather than damaging the opponent, it's trying to give you something to claw back. But if you're playing a deck that's got like space for like a lot of hand traps, or you're thinking about something, you know, that like maybe you're going second with a deck, or you're thinking about something that like I'm not quite sure what to add in here, like I think this is something you could always consider. Like I do actually think it's such a tidy card.
I think what's pretty cool about Fantasma in this particular format as well is because most of the Halka Firebrax combos will always end on something like a Savage Dragon and a Herald, and typically, like, when you're playing against that board, you want to attack over the Herald because you don't want to waste a card for them to negate with it. And Fantasma is just like really good for that because it's already going to be on your board by the time your turn rolls round, and obviously they don't control the Herald by the time you would drop this. So it is pretty good for that reason, I suppose. But
and I think if you are going against a combo deck and you say if you've sided, I don't know, you've got like say 12 hand traps or something like that in your side deck, and this is, you know, one of the 12, then obviously you're going to see the other stuff quite quickly if you've got this in there. But yeah, it's just one to think about. It's not amazing, it's not like something that's going to be like superb for the meta. Like obviously back when Sky Strikers were the meta, like it was the one that you really,
free, like,
yeah, like it was one you were like 100% playing. But it's just something to think about. I really like it. I think everybody's gone a bit cold on it, but yeah, definitely something to consider.
The next one we've got is Droll and Lockbird. This card basically hasn't seen any competitive play since around, was it January time? When did Spiral get hit? That was the last time I saw this card play.
This before last.
Yeah, so the last time this card saw play was basically because Master Plan was ridiculous. But now we're in a sort of a format where the best cards in the game aren't just like searching card after card after card.
I don't think any deck does like really do any like, you know, like damaging searches. Everything just summons at the minute, so it's like,
I think this card has got like a lot of application against the Dogma deck, but the problem is that if that's the only deck that this is good against, you don't really want this card anywhere near your deck at all, because you want stuff which is going to sort of work against multiple decks. Otherwise you're wasting just like 3 cards on, say, like a Dogma deck, which you may or may not even have a problem beating anyway, because that deck isn't actually necessarily like threatening. Like it's not like a big combo deck where it puts game out like so easily.
Yes, like, obviously if there was, you know, like a Danger FTK, like this is like, you know, a must-have.
It's pretty good against the Dragonlink deck as well.
Yeah, because everything just sort of adds to hand and searches. But yeah, it's just something to think about. It's like, I don't know, it's probably not worthy of play right at the minute, but if you're playing something like locals and, you know, you're having a quick look through this, see what's available, and you've got, you know, some decks like that are just searching, then obviously this is going to be a pick for you. But other than that, yeah, it's near or there really.
I think with Droll, like, if we get a Forbidden Limited list where, say, like the Hulk combos disappear and then the format sort of slows down to the point where Dogma is just like the best deck because that deck searches a lot, and then there's like just a bunch of rogue decks, and this card can actually just be really good, but just not right now, I don't think. The next card is Bell, and we're actually going to be talking about Bell, Schoolmeister and Crow all together here. We don't actually have copies of Schoolmeister and Crow with us, unfortunately, but they're sort of like the impermanents.
Yeah, Valor
and Mourner, where they do similar things. So we'll just talk about Bell first. So in this format, like, it doesn't really stop a lot at all. So
I think, yeah, like graveyard effects, the best one is obviously going to be the Golden Lord summon, the Block Dragon activation.
Well, like, it doesn't even activate, does it? It just summons. Like, it's a summon condition, so like this can't even stop that like coming out. So like, I think this is where like the problems with this instantly show. It's probably pretty good against like Invocation and stuff like that. I think you can stop the Apcalone with this because that card says add from your deck or graveyard to your hand. But like I just absolutely wouldn't recommend playing this card in particular.
I think you're only really going to play this if like for this format is if you're super scared of people starting to main lots of called by. I think that's the only like actual genuine application that this has, like to actually stop any kind of monster effect at the minute. Like it's just probably not one we're going to play. So that's probably Bella side. We talk about DD Crow next because that's
so like,
semi-similar.
So like Crow in like when you compare Crow to Bell, Crow is just like a lot better in almost like every way because not only against the like the Eldic deck you can just like banish their resources from the grave, whereas Bell like keeps them there and it just basically stuns them for a turn. Crow just gets rid of them permanently. You can do a lot with Crow when it comes to like just sort of like random stuff that sort of like recurs itself.
Like annoying things, stuff like Gizmek obviously back if people are still playing Orcust, like for them
Orcust in general.
Yeah, Orcust obviously it's like Crow is always such a good target for anything in the grave, but yeah, Gizmek, Golden Lord.
Even if you just Crow, say like one of the Noble Knights out the grave, when it's trying to equip to like Gear Freed, I think that's better than to try and bell it. Like I'm not saying that you're going to do, well you can't even bell that effect, but like you're still not going to do that anyway, but like Crow is just better than Bell in that sense.
I think Crow as well, against people that are still playing stuff like Salomon Great, obviously if they're going to activate say like a Spinny or they want to revive something or add something with Wolf etc, then obviously they're good things to slow things down. But I just think Crow like as a one for one, like what it's giving you and what it's taking away from your opponent, I just think it's like a mute point at the minute, so it's not something that I'd be destined to put back into my side deck. But
like it'd be quite cool to hit, like hitting Jet Sync when it's basically like the highest point that you're gonna like get with Crow. Schoolmeister though is a little bit different. We were talking about it downstairs, and it just seems a lot better in the sense where because that card can like negate Block Dragon. I think that's enough to make it better than the other two. Now, again, we're not saying that you should absolutely just be playing Schoolmeister.
I think we were talking just before we started filming this video that like Schoolmeister is probably the most forgotten one. I was talking about YCS Milan last year, and like it was a big Orcust format, and everybody was falling away from Crow again and playing Schoolmeister. Obviously, the Harp activation, the Nightmare, the Gizmek, like it just stops just one monster effect in the graveyard, so like things like block, the Golden Lord to summon. I think it has a lot more advantage than Crow at the minute, because sometimes you just want to get to a point where like if the game's quite stalemate and they top deck the Block Dragon effect and they're just winning at that point, but if you've got something to stop that, where like you have the Crow, the Block Dragon activates and you get rid of the block, but they're still getting 3 more cards to obviously play with.
It's the search that's the broken part, it's not the coming out of the grave.
But yeah, that's Schoolmeister. That's definitely one I think about having a little test with, like having a little play with. It's niche, it's different, it's nice. It's got a lot of applications that the others aren't really covering at the minute.
It's also randomly dark for a lore, so if you're already playing the dark deck that plays that card, then it's got applications there. The next card is No Material. I actually played this card in my side deck a few weeks ago in this format. And it didn't really go very well. Like I didn't really think about it that much because the way I saw this card is that it's just going to end their turn, and then I realised that the main thing I'd be dropping this on is Halkify Rocks, whereas I could just Valor it.
I've never ever been a fan of this card. I think the only time it came up was when people were playing like
As I thought.
Yeah, like the Nyala combo, and obviously now that the Master Rules change and they can summon things like anywhere else, I've never ever liked this card, so it's not something I'd be destined to buy in soon.
And then the next 3, well, the next 2 are very sort of like similar. Just Chaos Hunter and Lancia. Essentially, they do the same thing, just in different ways. So this one is just sort of like a temporary hand trap that just stops a turn of banishing. Chaos Hunter like summons itself, and then it has a continuous effect that stops your opponent banishing. It is one-sided, but again, like these just don't really solve the problems with the format.
I think Lancia might have some application, especially if people are playing like invoke decks again, because the whole recycling with Invocation Alistair, sometimes when you just bang this on them and they can't actually like
it stops them summoning Maximus as well.
Yeah, like they can't actually grab any sort of like advantage from like that turn, then sometimes that'll just be enough for you to like outgrind them because they've not plussed a couple, getting stuff back and recycling. So this is one to think about.
It's like if this is good against the deck, it's actually like a nuts card, isn't it? Because it's essentially like a turn skip. But like whether this is the format where this is like viable, maybe not. We'll find out. Like with how the sort of the format goes.
I think if locals is going to get like a lot of invoke decks or a lot of Orcus, then we're definitely just going to put these straight in, and obviously we'll update this to say, look, this has been amazing or this hasn't. But I think as it stands, until like, you know, the format changes sort of away from these big combo decks, then these are just kind of like, again, a little bit mute point. But Lancia definitely something to keep an eye on, might come good in the future.
And then the last one is probably like the most niche hand trap, is Dimension Shifter. The big problem with this card is that it only fits into very specific kinds of decks. But the effect of it is like absolutely like broken. Like I'd absolutely play this in any deck that I could.
If its stipulation wasn't almost the very first card you can activate.
No, I think it's more about like, because like this affects like both graves in it.
Yeah.
So like if I could drop this and then like I can happily play my turn the way that it like would usually, like whether this happened or not.
Because I think the only decks that can do that is stuff like Trap Tricks, right? Or anything that kind of sets 5 and goes.
Guru can do it.
Yeah. But like obviously, you know, people not having a graveyard, like a walking sort of macrocosmos, is like amazing. But yeah, I think like the stipulation is like once you use it as well, and then obviously once the turns have passed, and then you've still got 2 dead ones in your deck, where like a lot of hand traps don't do that. So like if you've still got 2 Valors in your deck and you draw in them afterwards, like they still actually have an application. But this is like, you know, like a turn 1 just boom and that's it, and if you see it you see it, and if you don't you don't.
I think this is like similar to the Lancia thing as well, where like say if you're playing like a slow deck like Trap Tricks and you draw your Dimension Shifter, you drop this, say if you like you go in second for instance and you drop this, they can actually just see that you've just done that and then just pass turn, and then if you can't like either just completely control the game, if you can't capitalise that turn, this was actually for nothing, and it was just like it did nothing basically. But I didn't really like this card. I quite like using it, especially online, because a lot of people just scoop as soon as you drop it. But yeah, so those are like the main hand traps that we've sort of got to talk about. I don't think we've really missed any hand trap at all. I think we've at least mentioned them, like Crow and Schoolmeister, obviously. But yeah, I think like if you were to pick 3 of these hand traps that you had to play 3 of in your deck, which ones would they be?
I think at the minute this would probably be number 1, and then possibly this, and I think these, like it'd be a pick out of these, so like I might not play this or I might not play this, so it just depends on what deck I'm playing. But I think these 4 are the ones that I'd be picking out straight away. I'm probably going to be playing some Dogmatica, so I might think about this because I'm probably going to be blind in second with that deck. But
so I love blind second decks, so I think I'd probably just use Gamma as well on top of these 2, I think.
But yeah, if you guys have got some suggestions, let us know what you pick out of these. I think there's like 12 or 15 hand traps here, so yeah, let us know in the comments what you guys would be picking and what you've been playing and what you've had some success with. As always, like, comment and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, really appreciate it. We're going to be back probably next week with a similar video.
So thank you for watching, like, comment, subscribe. If you found this video helpful or interesting at all, please do sub. We'll be back again next week with something similar to this. Next week we're going to be talking about side deck cards and how to do it as well, because a lot of people just don't really understand the like side decking anyway. Yeah, like the actual like thesis behind why you put in a certain card in and against a certain matchup. But we'll cover like as many cards that are going to be like as meta relevant as possible, quite similar to this. So yeah, tune in next week. Really appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.